Okay, and another lovely example of, we keep getting more and more information here, how the dialectic works, and we see more and more how useful this relatively simple tool of Gestalt therapy is to understand this stuff. I mean, you can get blue in the face reading, you know, try to read, get the same ideas out of Likutei Moharan, you know, without having a good background in philosophy, and, you know, you get some of the most spaced out, bewildered people in the world reading that book and dancing around with some kind of a hysterical frenzy and thinking they know what they're talking about. Because the Rebbe who doesn't know what he's talking about, and who learned it from another Rebbe who doesn't know what he's talking about, and none of them take the trouble to get to the basic logical ideas. Okay, but I'm going to try to avoid that trap. So, let's boil this one down to some hard-nosed thinking here. Running to God. 65. They heard the sound of Hashem, God, moving about in the garden in the wind of the day. The man and his wife hid from God. So Adam and Eve are hiding. Okay? Hiding from God. Now, simple parallel in Gestalt therapy is whether you want to avoid or you want to deal. The way we avoid is by getting stuck in the habits and hanging on to our habits. In Gestalt therapy, there are 5 levels of we call self-interruptions. Oops, self-interruptions. There's confluence, where you're flowing with. Con is with, fluer to flow. You're flowing with your habits, like a psychotic baby, totally locked into your little ritual world there. Anything that isn't totally exactly the way you want it to be, you're going to explode or kill somebody or kill yourself or something. The next higher level of sanity is introduction. You've swallowed some authority figure, you know, maybe your father, maybe your mother, maybe the Rebbe, maybe Adolf Hitler, whoever it is, you have a dibuk that's running your life. Okay? And the next level is projection. You're a little more alive, but you're projecting most of your aggression and your feelings out to other people. That person's going to kill me, that person's going to rape me. Projection. Retroflexion. You're a little healthier than that. Energy wants to come out. What do? You can make compulsive rituals and, oh God, help me, I gotta do this, I gotta. You make yourself a nervous wreck, and that's one sure way not to communicate with anything or anybody, except your own body, your own compulsions. And then finally egotism, where you're all set to go with the flow, and then you say to yourself, oh my God, who am I anyway? What am I doing here? How do I get involved in this stuff? I can't do that. me be religious, or say goodbye to my mother and let her die, and I gotta hold on to her. What are you talking about? I can't do that. Even though you're just about ready, you've gone through the whole process, you won't let go because your self-image of who you think you are is keeping you that way. So that's called egotism. That's the healthiest of the 5 levels of self-interruptions. All right, so each of these self-interruptions is a way of avoiding what? Avoiding life, avoiding the action, avoiding the dialectic, avoiding everything that this whole system is about. And you manage to avoid it, so we all do it to some extent. We avoid things by hanging on to safe patterns of behavior. Okay? So, here's what Shlomo says: you, my beautiful friends, whenever a person is sad, they want to run away from the world. They're avoiding. Okay? Rather than dealing. So you're not saying, see now, let's see what he says here. Whenever a person is sad, they want to run away from the world. They want to run away from themselves. They want to run away from themselves, and they want to run away from God. Whenever a person is sad. Now that sounds a little fishy, because really, the goal should be here to allow yourself to suffer the process. You know, so it's like a calculated risk. If I allow myself to have a little bit of discomfort, then I have faith that somehow or other this river of experience, this truth search, maybe this crazy teacher or therapist, whatever it is, maybe he's right, and maybe it'll work, you know. So an element of allowing yourself to suffer, to be sad. So right away I'm a little suspicious about that first sentence. They are hiding and building walls around themselves, okay? Yeah, okay. So here's what Shlomo says. So what should I do? And this is what Reb Nosson, disciple of main student of Nachman of Breslov, told him, instead of running away, run to the one, to the only one who can help. Okay, that's the idea. So allow yourself to identify with the coming solution, to complete the process you're doing, to run. But it's not the idea of running to the one. It's the idea of running to the one and the many. Remember, the one that encompasses all these things that I'm going through, and allowing myself to suffer the endless process of death and rebirth and negations of the negations, whatever you want to call it. In the case of the example I mentioned, allowing yourself to say goodbye to Mother, if that's what it's about. And that way you're running to the oneness that will include you and your mother in a higher level integration, in some kind of a sense that makes some kind of a sense emotionally or to you. All right? And run to that rather than running away from that. Okay? Sadly, as Shlomo says, sadly enough, when we get older, we get perverted, we run away from everything. Okay, now the sense I can make of that is, and in a certain sense it's true, the older we get, we're more inclined to enjoy our habits. We don't want to take risks. Some of us, anyway, don't want to take risks unless we're used to taking risks. So that's the idea of avoidances, self-interruptions. So in that sense, he's kind of saying like the older we get, the more we get to be like a psychotic 5-year-old. Except that it's not that extreme, of course. Adam was driven out of paradise because he was hiding from God. Why were you hiding? You don't trust me enough to tell me you did wrong. Okay, that's the same idea here. To trust God is to allow yourself to deal with this experience of contact and withdrawal. Now, this is a major point that he's going to get to in other lessons. We'll get to it. I told you this is going to be not so systematic, but I'm trying to get to these things as they come along. In what sense are you talking to God when you do Gestalt therapy or praying? In this sense. Every time you do this process of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, you go inside to the void, you get a new idea. Where's the idea coming from? It's coming from the void. Who's the void? God, the nothingness, the everythingness, whatever you want to call it, the Ein Sof. That's where it's coming from. So that word that's coming out of you when you go into that void each time, each time you go in, you get another syllable of that word. So at the end of 3 hours, if you've done it 5 times, you have 5 syllables, and maybe you begin to get an overall existential message of the whole session. So the rhythm of contact and withdrawal, in that sense, is a conversation, because the contact part is my everyday experience. I see this, I see that, I'm in touch with my body, I'm in touch with my fantasies. That's my contact. That's me talking to God. I'm telling that to the void, to God, when I say I'm aware of this, And then I go inside, and I just allow myself to be open to hear what God's answer is, So every time I go inside with one of those X and minus X things, I'm going inside with another question. And every time I come out with a new idea, I'm getting another answer. So in that sense, it's a dialogue with God. The rhythm of contact and withdrawal is a conversation with God. And that's the sense that we're going to see over and over again, that when we see the whole thing about questions and answers with God, that's why the Gestalt model is so beautiful. You can see it happening right there. The word that comes out of you when you do this process of contact and withdrawal is the answer to your questions. You propose the questions to God because you're the guy that comes up with all the opposites. And then you allow God to answer your questions by allowing yourself to be passive. So there's an active passivity involved here. Action is to set up the opposites. Passivity is to allow yourself to be stupid enough to discover a new idea. Point is, just like Adam, if we don't allow ourselves to do this talk to God thing, we hide from God with our avoidances, with our habits, with our self-interruptions, then that we're going to get kicked out of Gan Eden also. Why were you hiding? You don't trust me enough to tell me you did wrong. Yeah, you got to trust God, trust whatever, trust something. You don't need to trust a therapist. You can do this yourself, You don't have to be a genius to read Gestalt therapy verbatim and copy the exercises and just go off on the top of a hill somewhere and talk to God. By the way, if you look at my video called Hit Bo the Dud, Talking to God, which has been seen by probably about 30,000 people already. It seems to be a hit. You'll see me doing that process, dealing with the death of my mother. Okay, I did it. I did it. And I did a similar process when I dealt with my brother, another video, which is called The Living Room, dealing with the death of my brother. So I'm talking about something that I do myself. You know, I'm not just making this up. All right. The last sentence is here. I'm looking at the end of the, probably getting the end of the tape here. The Gemara says, "Ein adam omed al divrei Torah ela im ken nichshal bahen." In other words, no man grasps divrei Torah, the words of the Torah or the way of the Torah, ela im ken, unless he nichshal, unless he fails. He goes through the process of all the time trying and failing, all the time ascent and then descent. Each time I gotta go a little ahead to y, then I go back to x. I'm stuck in x, y, and minus y. I jump ahead to z, then I go back and I'm stuck in the z and minus z. And it's always falling in order to to rise. Jacob's ladder. All right, called learning from mistakes. Shlomo says the deepest knowledge comes from mistakes. You don't learn until you make mistakes. Everything is okay, but why are you hiding? Okay, so that's it. Don't hide from the mistakes. All right, so we see how just talking about this big, what is a lech, what kind of motion? We unfolded here the entire, pretty much, maybe most of the elements of dialectical thinking, gestalt therapy, and at the same time I've showed you maybe 10, 20 different ways that Shlomo himself is using this. Now, how much Shlomo himself knew he was doing this, I don't know. I have no references. I never talked to him enough. In fact, when I did talk to him, I could not get him to talk about these things in his philosophical way. Maybe he didn't want to, maybe he didn't know, I don't know. So he might have got this stuff from his teachers, from the rabbis, other people. He might have, probably he knows very well what he's doing, because the main thing about this book that I'm impressed with, it is so consistent. Here we have about 50 different sections here from the Torah, and everyone is using the same systematic thinking, the same words mean the same thing, the metaphors are exactly used very consistently, occasionally a little different, but really this system is too precise, too well done to be done by a person that doesn't really know philosophy. It's exactly what Shlomo, what Nachman Abresov said. He's telling all his disciples, no, God forbid you should study philosophy. God forbid you should study the guide of Maimonides. Meanwhile, if he didn't study those books, he couldn't have written what he did and said what he said. So he's obviously talking on two different levels. Simple things for the simple people and more complicated things for the more complicated people. You know, the Peshat, the Sod. I'm giving you the Sod. Shlomo is usually giving you the Peshat. And whether he would want to bother with the Sod, I don't know how he would deal with that. Okay. Well, I think I've made my point about the idea of motion as the first video here. Getting to the end of the video, I'm asking myself, did I cover everything? No, I didn't cover everything, but I think I covered something. The idea of motion. What is it? Dialectical motion. And that's the kind of motion, lech lecha. Keep moving with the descents and the ascents, but the main thing is to be here and now, using that kind of here and now awareness process rather than getting stuck in the other kind of thinking. So it's inductive logic versus deductive logic. Using inductive logic rather than getting stuck in deductive logic. Abraham Avinu is an inductive man. Noah and Eve are deductive people. We'll get into those more of that technical jargon later on. You don't have to know that for this quiz, okay? For the next quiz, but it's all there, right? We've introduced so much of this stuff already, just by dealing with one simple idea of what is motion, lech lecha. What's he talking about? How is it possible to keep going all the time and stay in one place, and all the time be going up and going down at the same time? It's total paradoxical stuff, but yet it's totally logically clear if you take the trouble to think it through. If you don't take the trouble to think it through, then, well, you're like most other people. You know, cotton candy between your ears and follow the rabbi. Follow. Follow the Rebbe song. Okay, if that's all you need is his Shlomo's dances and songs and all that, you got it. If you want more than that, maybe you'll stick around and hear some more. Okay, thank you.